2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968, as discussion of faking of the Apollo lunar missions, 1968 to 72, by Sean McHugh, revised August 2026, part 3 of 3. The men make 3 unwise trips outside the spacecraft, as again, 2 outwardly rational and unsuspecting, and with the second also being after they discuss Hal's malfunctioning, and the third even after Poole dies. Hal didn't attack and kill Bowman on his first pod outing, as this would arouse suspicion in Poole, who might not go after him. But Bowman goes after Poole after being led into a false sense of security. He leaves his helmet behind, as he has no plans to depart from the pod this time, but metaphorically, this is losing his head in acting rashly. However, Poole's spherical pod as a white eyeball with black pupil window rises out of the eclipse by the ship's spherical head as light begins to dawn. Moreover, Mission Control, as the elite, didn't instruct Hal to kill the 2 active plus 3 hibernating crew, in a potential reflection of them killing the 3 uncooperative Apollo 1 astronauts, where Hal's chess and conversation would have been to see if the crew were worth him fighting for. If Hal can investigate alone, then no crew are needed in the first place. The pod bay has 3 pods and 3 suits, in line with the hibernating crew's training for the activity at Jupiter, and Floyd prepares his video for the crew for release at Jupiter. Neither did Bowman have the chance to activate the hibernating crew's emergency resuscitation, whose instructions are seen, to spend the rest of the journey with them before him, rather than them leave in the pod at the end. The resuscitation option is there out of the elite's subliminal concerns that Hal might fail, where the others might be needed to help, but Bowman and Poole, again, don't think of this. Bowman ultimately finds resourcefulness enough to fight back and succeed over Hal, and those behind him, and accordingly, the elite behind Apollo. Bowman disconnecting Hal and going on to gain his modest enlightenment is also Kubrick trying to disconnect himself from the elite controlling him, following his part in Apollo. The protagonist Bowman, like the protagonist Ape, stop looking up to and fearing their Hal monolith and Earth monolith, and their environment's power relations, and instead learn something. Hal's final effort to stop Bowman disconnecting him is to play the video from Floyd for arrival at Jupiter, explaining the real nature of the mission, as investigation following a lunar extraterrestrial artifact sending a message there, and Bowman is indeed momentarily very surprised. Hal shows the video is against his normal programming to be deceitful about the mission before arrival, but will be allowed because his own preservation is threatened. Floyd says only Hal on board was told of the mission, and which with a few moments' thought is seen to be in conflict with his service, and hence precipitating the situation. It's abjectly sad, but Bowman is unresponsive. Moreover, when Hal initially tries to talk to Bowman about his programming troubles, he makes it clear that the hibernating crew know what he knows. Yet Floyd addresses the whole crew after the revival process, in a continuing pretense towards Bowman and Poole, where the other 3 were supposed to lie to them that they didn't know, even while being trained for it. Hal would also be supposed to support these further lies, and hence adding to his internal tensions, as leading to his rampage against the whole crew. The masses are indeed ape-like and moronic, yet there can be better communication than this as leading to such antagonism. A nationalist society can provide a system where all tiers have senses of identity and belonging to both develop personally and contribute to the whole, while the more conscious and capable rise. The elite, with their simplistic deception, fear nationalism as their foremost threat, with its means for the tiers below to unite against them, and with World War II, for example, being conducted to stop its spread. For Bowman's enlightenment, in terms of coming to one's senses as far as one can, alongside the ears, the eyes as seeing or understanding in the dark are given by the Discovery pods and their lights. By contrast, there are eyes painted on the spacesuit helmets, which, as not real, align with the crew not seeing, and hence when Bowman does begin to see, he is without his helmet. Moreover, before exiting the bay, the eyeball pod is seen behind an eyelid as opening upwards and downwards from a horizontal line. The third eye of intuition, or enlightenment, in the vast dharmic or context-based righteousness traditions beyond the West, and again particularly associated with the Hindu god Shiva, is symbolically positioned between the physical eyes, and typically as the tilic forehead marking. Discovery then has 3 circular openings as eyes, where Bowman exits first from the center, but then from the left in his rash decision to retrieve Poole, and again from the center for his third and final exit for the Stargate. There is added majesty here, with light blazing out, while the sun also flares in his direction, and the outside 2 exits for the intellect are more visible and closed, as in meditation. Hal's central yellow light that Bowman has overcome also compares with the sun. At Jupiter, there are 9 moving shots of its 4 large Galilean moons in lines at oblique angles, moving away from the vertical as truth is approached, and with the horizontal monolith appearing between them, plus shots of Jupiter's dark side eclipsing the sun. In the final vertical image of them, with Bowman's pod also in alignment, the sun is missing from its position and substituted by the Stargate as the source of the light, appearing as the monolith disappears from the line and is presumably converted into it. The 6 objects are seen over Jupiter in a washed-out light color, comparing with the Earth. The sequence of shots then represent the vindication of Galileo's heliocentric arguments, and hence the key critique of the fear-based establishment after the Renaissance from the 15th century that brought the whole modern period with its great achievements. This also looks forwards to the Stargate pyramid imagery and final room in Renaissance style.
The ancient Greeks are the West's founders, where their chief god Zeus becomes the Roman god Jupiter. And at Jupiter, the Stargate indicates the West's mistaken prioritization of discursive, intellectual, or rational thought as vertical over lateral intuition or direct insight as horizontal. The predisposition as a feature of Western ethnic white psychology tends to result in selection for a low-quality elite with simplistically reasoned decisions, and accordingly, their Apollo fakery. Similar to the outline in Plato's Republic from ancient Greece, a rightful social pyramid capstone has an understanding going beyond its own material interests, and instead values the interconnection of all tiers beneath in a nationalist regard for the home culture, where deception as such, although irreducible, is applied to ends favoring the whole. The Jupiter imagery is accompanied by Ligeti's Requiem for Deathly Unknowing, but with the rise of something new, where Bowman's enlightenment also takes place at great distance from the benighted, propagandized Earth and Moon with their monolith screens. The synthesized Stargate sequence then equates journeys of the cosmos and the mind, where first Bowman's head, as his worldview is increasingly shaken, followed by forward-moving imagery with a vertical dividing line, interspersed with 3 shots of his realizing and alarmed face over Apollo, where after the first face, the Requiem switches to the complete atmospheres as Apollo atmospheres. Following the third face, the dividing line suddenly switches to horizontal as intuitive understanding, while also referencing the Kubrick horizontal imagery technique in Apollo and the film. Then there's a 4th and horrified face, more horizontal imagery, a single blinking eye of his as the one pointed eye of consciousness and truth, and exploding stars as awakening a mind, or at least for the ape-like, less conscious, replacing their worldview. Famous 12th century Hindu writer Allama Prabhu describes the shift to the intuition and truth as the sudden dawn of a million suns. This is followed by 11 shots of slowly moving cosmic imagery, conflating with conception or other biological processes, where the human condition is a microcosm, aligning with the Discovery sperm to Jupiter egg journey, and preceding Bowman's rebirth from his shattered mind at the end. Then his eye returns. Then a lowercase letter I, as the eye in Seeing Clearly, beneath 7 pyramids of 4 sides with a base behind that slowly rotate, these being the social order upwards to power at the capstones, where the elite uniquely have no one above them, and whose material concerns are only to maintain their position. This is in similar colors to the previous eye. The 7 pyramids are the 7 weekdays from the 7 bright celestial objects that are seen to move with the unaided eye, and with reference to Bowman's eye, where the larger outside 2 are for the much larger and brighter moon and sun. These are also the film's foremost objects alongside the Earth and seen to join the others.
The five between are planets, with Jupiter in the center and two slightly smaller for the two sometimes dimmer planets inside the Earth's orbit. They were all named in the ancient world after Greek and Roman gods, with the line here as Monday Moon, Tuesday Mars, Wednesday Mercury, Thursday Jupiter, Friday Venus, Saturday Saturn, and Sunday Sun. Up to the Renaissance, the elite attempted to normalize this movement against the array of fixed background stars revolving around a fixed Earth as embodying the limits of independent inquiry and critical thinking. The moving objects, as with occasional recalcitrant thinkers, were dismissed as harmlessly coming and going against fixed backgrounds of either heavens or royalty, under the same divine sanction and pyramid-top godlike powers, and where any more developed independence of mind was presupposed as wrongful. Authorities took drastic action against those trying to observe or theorizing about movement, either in the background or the Earth, the most famous figure again being Galileo, and following Bruno, who argued the stars were just more suns at a distance. Galileo's notion of the five planets' sometimes strange movements being explained by them orbiting the sun and not the Earth, and with the Earth likewise in orbit as just another planet, plus it, rather than the heavens rotating daily, was anathema, as it meant a cosmos of much greater change, where earthly order wasn't at a rightful center. Historically, the planets, plus sun and moon, were co-opted into the social structure, either by deification or as a parallel of independent minds to ignore, while occasional other non-system phenomenon, particularly comets and meteors, were deemed entirely inauspicious and foreboding. However, after millennia of the concern for the heavens' independence from social organization, and how its understanding via objective reasoning and mathematics have the potential of being turned on the elite, the mid-20th century developed the elite's worst fears of real travel into the heavens, to take a look around and then look back in wider perspective. Hence the faking of human travel to the moon, out of the real space program of only low Earth orbit and robotic space probes, along with a contemporary major science fiction film about travel to the moon and beyond, to subliminally indicate and justify the fakery was needed in response. The masses are kept down and the hierarchy bolstered, while permanent delays and excuses issued for deploying modern technology for any such travel, along with budget cuts, and where instead distracting international wars against fake foreign enemies are fully funded. The Stargate planet capstones, then, represent the challenge after the Renaissance and scientific revolution, as summarized by astronomy, of elite control over more critical spirits looking to deeper understanding of the world, and instead the elite's more precarious modern period position. The Industrial Revolution and Enlightenment periods followed to establish Western modernity and liberalism, and Apollo is the elite's spite back at the population, where a huge and resonating space science achievement is set up for them to believe in, but is fabulously falsified and stalled. In response to this, though, 2001 confirms the heavens, generally, as a vehicle for critical thinking, while providing fine interplanetary travel science fiction to encourage interest in the wider perspective it offers, as all threatening to the elite. They want a famous film to give the truth where the masses are too lowly to notice, but Kubrick, as an outsider, however, also provides criticality back onto them. Then, the discovery of extraterrestrials as a concern for cultural shock, as Floyd says, beyond Apollo, understood only as a screen, is the reminder it would provide that there are wider unknown forces beyond the social order, as again encouraging critique of it. Additionally, the design of 5+2 for the elite is reflected in the elite's secretive figures by the moon monolith for the photo, as the 5 men plus the 2 light stands behind, yet where their pose is disrupted by the monolith's signal as reflecting audio-visual screens having potential for truth rising, as well as people control, and hence loss of elite power. Moreover, the 5+2 set of tilted squares as pyramid capstones for elite power giving way has been identified in backgrounds of shots in 5 of Kubrick's other films. The shots upwards of the apes and moon monoliths resemble looking up at the Egyptian pyramids, but where, respectively, the crescent moon and Earth is the separated capstone with its separate interests. These represent Apollo, where the Earth is the moon and the moon the Earth, both shown mostly in the darkness of ignorance, while the sun is only a thin section below as the sleeping but dawning eye of awareness. The apes monolith is the same object as the moon monolith, having left Earth to be buried on the moon, all as earthy and lunar filming for Apollo are the same thing. Also, the perspective of the meeting room desks with Floyd as the capstone compares, particularly with him as the elite in control of screen propaganda and Apollo at the height of it. Then the final shot of Jupiter and its moons is a related image, with, by contrast, the enlightening Stargate becoming the apex. Pyramid and capstone symbols are found on magnetic holds by the antenna, where Bowman places a monolithic box as the magnetic nature of screens for the masses. Moreover, the natural social pyramid with the separated capstone is famously on the American $1 banknote since 1935, with this being the Masonic number of 33 years before 2001, of 1968, and with the year 2001 being 33 years after 1968. The elite is challenged here in the vision that following Apollo, there will be multiple lunar bases by 2001, when there wouldn't be because no manned lunar program exists to begin with. The pyramid with capstone is further expressed by the shape of the capital letter A, as hence contrived for the names Apollo, its stylized A logo, the first landing with Armstrong and Aldrin, where none of the 10 men in the other 5 landings have A surnames, Artemis, its successor program, and its stylized A and Gateway Lunar Station logos, plus NASA and its logo. Then A Space Odyssey. While the A in the title isn't needed, but with it also totals the Masonic and reincarnation number of 13 letters. Plus, it uses the key composition of atmospheres, along with Also Sprach Zarathustra. And Kubrick's next film, A Clockwork Orange, likewise doesn't need the A, yet is emphasized by its A-shaped theatrical poster. And 2001's contemporary counterpart film, likewise featuring apes as the moronic masses, is Planet of the Apes. The 2001 in the title is also looking to a better elite, where the 2 is duality, or less conscious intellectual rationality of one idea compared to another, before passing through the 00 of 2 closed intellectual eyes, to the 1 of unity, where ideas are understood in terms of intuitive truth. Then A is the first letter of the alphabet, while the word monolith, as mentioned by Floyd in his video, is Greek for single or unitary stone, with its shape also resembling the number 1, although Apollo 11, as 2 ones and with its 2 A astronauts, is still duality. After the pyramids, Bowman's eye returns again, then more horizontal imagery at a slower pace as the mind settling down after the revelation, and where at the end another letter I appears, now on the upper side of the divide, and hence is seen reversed as an exclamation mark. This also recalls the space station hub entrance, with its windows top and bottom, plus the other 2 sides, and centrifugal gravity for activity seen in those as away from the hub, along with related eye-lit areas at the base. It's immediately followed by a further Bowman's eye, as reversing the I letter I order, and indicating that the real Renaissance criticality takes place between the eyes. Again, the letter I screen and Bowman's eye screen are in the same colors. Following this, for the eye to further consider, are 14 shots of landscapes distorted by filtered colors and comprising the last 3 minutes of the 9-minute main sequence of the Stargate before the room. This lengthy time is to notice that these are the previous apes' Earth landscapes, plus craggy moonscapes conflated together, and so that the Apollo moon was filmed on Earth. For the 3rd time, the atmosphere's music is given through to the room for reflection on atmosphere. No landscapes are identical with those previously seen, as making it less obvious that the moon is the Earth, but they include structures seemingly only from different angles, while Utah Monument Valley-type features underline that most of it is an American desert. Some landscapes feature water, with the 6th being a still sea and the 7th a moving sea, referencing Apollo 11's Sea of Tranquility landing site, and with these in parallel with 2 of the opening Apes landscape shots, likewise resembling seas. The alien quality from the colors is only a film technique, and nothing from beyond the Earth, while in parallel, all the film's shots of Earth from space are likewise vague in lacking discernible continents. At the end of the main Stargate sequence, Bowman's eye returns for a fifth and final time, where, in astonishment at the Apollo landscape's fabrication, he blinks through 6 color filters, as used for them, with some also seen in the previous eye shots: blue-red, green-red, purple, yellow-purple, green-red, and yellow-blue, before his real light blue eye is given. It's further a reminder of the film as visually symbolic. Finally, his pod, with its connections with an eye, appears likewise momentarily in the room, in his distraught and disoriented state. The Stargate room's Renaissance decor references the rebirth of interest in ancient Greek culture and its critical thinking, and moreover, the West, as led by America, has state buildings and symbols in neoclassical or ancient Greek and Roman styles in connecting with its origins. The film's title, then, is after the Greek epic literary myth by Homer of Odyssey, 8th century BCE, where Bowman's journey and enlightenment as coming back to the Earth and himself parallel Homer's story about a journey home via many perils. Bowman's rebirth here, as reoriented away from overly rational thought, and again towards sexuality, as resulting in his baby state, is given in the paintings and sculpture being of courtship, while referencing the Nietzschean pre-Socratic criticality in better balance with intuition to create real understanding. The floor's 8x10 grid, sometimes framed as 8x8, compares with the space station's ceilings for complex chess-style maneuverings, while floor becoming ceiling compares with the Stargate's eye letter and elsewhere. In some shots, a lens is also used to make the design and room curve to recall the space station concourse plus Discovery Hub. The chess plus Poole's boxing punches on Discovery, but only going round and round, and judo as seen on a monolith-shaped screen on the moonship further reflect the strategizing between Kubrick and the elite controllers over Apollo, along with characters' subliminal awareness of subsurface antagonism. Bowman, looking at his reflection in a mirror in his protective spacesuit, is Kubrick looking at himself sadly as co-opted into the Apollo fabrication with its foolish spacesuits, where the truth has to be protected inside under his agreement or formal oath, as Floyd says. Hal is likewise Kubrick here, in terms of his mandate not to divulge the truth of what the mission is about or what the film is about. Hal's relationship with his ship crew is Kubrick's with his filmmaking crew, where both must keep quiet about exactly what they're doing, and it distresses them inside. Hal reaching out to Bowman is Kubrick reaching out to the audience with the whole film, and likewise to limited results. Bowman shatters a goblet as the film, having shattered illusion for those who can see, while giving the elite some moral clearance in their deception of those who can't. Plus Kubrick having found ways to criticize the weak elite with their clinking glasses. However, he never speaks in the room and ages through to his deathbed, where he reaches defeatedly towards a fourth and vertical monolith, materializing as him having to remain silent lifelong. Finally, Bowman reverts to a fetus, as freed from all social conditioning, before the camera moves into the vertical monolith, so that momentarily all that can be seen of it is the film's horizontal screen, and thus conflating the two orientations for deception and truth. Immediately out of this blackness, the moon appears as Apollo, linked via the fake monolith back to the cinema screen, and with the Earth below all to the Zarathustra music again, as the notion of creating a reality out of Bowman's renewed condition in his bubble to the side. The concluding Stargate room's extreme weirdness underlines the urgent subtext across the film. Bowman as fetus is the less conscious mind based only on norms, completely stripped out after his worldview is devastated by the Apollo deception and its ramifications. The fetus represents the objective third-party position for critical thinking that the less conscious lack with the triangle it makes with the Apollo moon and propagandized Earth. Its colors and distorted bubble curves compare with the Earth, and it first looks at the Earth with its likewise subhuman or ape-like majority, before turning to face the camera and the majority audience in saying, "This is you," as a statement of fact rather than any complaining. How stupid are you to be less than a baby? The Blue Danube for 8 minutes, minus its 1.5-minute introduction, then accompanies the closing credits up to the words "The End" of 4 minutes before a black screen for 4 further minutes, in parallel with the opening and intermission atmospheres. The whole preceding film replaces the introduction. The waltz, for circuitous courting encounters and smirk, plus its sexual reference and meaning of revolve, is Apollo, the monoliths, the elite, Kubrick, the audience, the truth, and the rest, in a dance for the viewer to notice and think over as howsoever they can. Again, they're stared in the face with thoughts about travel to the moon and a screen that can be filled. Truth can't be foregrounded as an intellectual proposition, as this always rests on supporting premises or presuppositions, and instead has to be perceived intuitively and subjectively down to life's foundations, in courtship with its deception and sexuality. 2001 as an intellectually ambiguous communication device for the truth about Apollo parallels the infant's telephone, Russian antenna and bug, discovery antenna, pod transmitter, and lip reading, where the less conscious audience fails to interpret the film all as the characters fail to interpret each other. Moreover, English ambient or atmospheric music composer Brian Eno, promoted by the elite in popular culture, provided a fine extended work in 1983 for an American documentary film on Apollo called For All Mankind, released 1989. The music is titled after the 2001 film and Ligoti's Atmospheres, and with reference to 2001 as discussion of the Apollo missions only as atmospheres and as film soundtracks. Apollo Atmospheres and Soundtracks, and again with its capital A's. The novelization by Arthur C. Clarke, written at the same time, yet with many departures from the film and its visual symbolism, yet agreed by Kubrick, is part of the deception offered. Clarke is even allowed to be subtly credited for the whole project when he only provided ideas under Kubrick's vision and editorial control, and never understood its Apollo references and meaning. His novel, although evocative, is condoned plagiarism, while he then provided a series of sequels that further his confusion, with the first converted into a film sequel. Moreover, the tensions within Kubrick, in parallel with Hal, from working for a low-grade and corrupt elite for the Apollo deception, are further explored at similar levels of abstraction in his film The Shining, 1980. Then The Planet of the Apes, 1968 film, was released on the same day as 2001 as a parallel commentary on the masses via related themes, despite its different production company. 3 astronauts, with one dead after hibernation, travel to what they think is a new world, dominated by talking apes, and which the protagonist finally discovers in horror, only to be the Earth. 2001 has an active crew of 3, including Hal, with others in hibernation. People travel to the moon, but symbolically it's only an audiovisual screen, which begins with a planet of apes, but with most current people, despite being able to talk, still having ape-like uncritical minds, and where the protagonist finally, if symbolically, discovers in horror that the moon is the Earth. In Planet of the Apes, the original humans are so stupid they've annihilated most of themselves and regressed into a retarded and speechless state. However, the apes are scarcely better, with their leadership in turn lying to its own people to help keep them under control. While there's a scene with 3 elite apes in the Japanese 3 monkeys myth of seeing, hearing, and speaking no evil, or just keeping quiet and lacking the criticality to deal with situations, or the communication of eyes, ears, and speech all shut down. Moreover, one of the astronauts, on arrival, plants an American flag, but is laughed at all, as Apollo planting an American flag is a laugh, and in its famous ending, the high principled ideals of America and the West are accordingly completely smashed by the sunken and ruined Statue of Liberty. Society had only the regular, less conscious elite, who used deception for simplistic goals of power and maintaining position in the pyramid, instead of an elite valuing the whole in a nationalist structure to secure and develop society. The Apollo record has numerous inconsistencies, but the foremost objection is its unscientific status in failing to meet sufficiently the scientific method's essential independent verification, or reproducibility,
and has only been accepted by scientists out of institutional and moronic peer pressure to operate in given paradigms, along with state salaries and funding ultimately controlled by the elite. The existing level of verification is nowhere near normal academic journal levels for acceptance as science, nor for a court of law. Even if the Apollo record was true, it can't yet be taken as true, and the vast sky castle of research and literature based on its data should be recategorized as speculation pending confirmation.
Regular replies against fakery, such as "the Soviets would have said," or citing astronaut testimony, are irrelevant to independent verification and only show Apollo's abject status. Normally, if a scientific institution making a claim presented as its verification that its competitors would speak out if they weren't being truthful, or that those directly involved in the process said it was true, it would be shut down as beyond incompetent and ridiculous. Moreover, potential agreements made with the Soviets include America taking the fake moon and the Soviets taking the real Vietnam. Verification is easy to achieve by sending Android or other robots critically overseen by multiple parties to walk around the landing sites while conducting useful new science and taking batteries to operate for months or years. They can be cheaply sent and only one way, with little or no protection against vacuum, temperature, or radiation, and with no oxygen, food, or water, and even survive a rough landing. Yet this is never done. And instead, human missions only constantly planned and canceled for many decades in increasingly obvious prevarication and rising alarm over Apollo. The primary reason for faking Apollo is to prevent the masses' perspective widening by traveling to the next world and looking back to question exploitative power structures beneath social surfaces and the control and privilege hierarchy. The concern is to keep their focus via mass media on manufactured neurotic small-scale conflict and ongoing other vapid distraction. The masses are made to think humanity has been to the moon so that it's no longer a goal, even while no one went back since and the technology for it reversed and became unavailable. But it hasn't been, and the impact that regular travel there would bring to the human mind remains yet to be experienced. The Apollo deception is a bigger event in human history than a real Apollo would have been, and while the uncritical masses accepting it means the elite are ethically moderated, it also affects the critical minority and humanity advancing under a better system. Credit to Rob Ager of Collative Learning for some ideas here. Any questions?